Today, we're going to learn how to steal like an AI artist. We're going to go over how to use ComfyUI, ControlNet, and IP-Adapter to create a totally new image and combine it with another image in Runway ML's first and last frame feature to make another video that we can bring into After Effects, combine it with other shots, and just create a cool transition for any type of project. Let's get into it. We're going to bring this still image that I grabbed. We're going to open up Photoshop and we're going to select the bottom of this black bar and we're going to use the generative fill just to give us some options to clean that part up, right? And then we're going to select the top bar and do the same thing. Click on generative fill, get some options for that, right? And it gives us a really good base in order for us to work on. Right? After that, I'm going to clean up this text with the remove tool. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select the image at the bottom underneath the generative fill layers and just start writing over these letters, right? And it's doing a really good job of just cleaning up these letters. So that's one thing I like about the remove tool. It's a really quick way of just cleaning images up. If there's little speckles here and there, text that you want to clean up, you could go in there and just draw over it, and it just uses the environment, the area, to clean it up. So here you go, just going over these letters. And then I just sped it up because this is going to take a good 30 minutes, right? So at one point, there's going to be a time where this process is going to take too long. What you could do is just use the magic lasso or the marquee tool and just select over big chunks of areas and then use the generative fill just to fill in those areas. So that's what I did here. And then I went back to using the remove tool, and I'm going to speed that up real quick. When you zoom out of the image and you look at it as a whole, sometimes it just doesn't work. So the good thing about generative fill is that you could keep on generating until you get something you like, right? So that's what I did. After all that cleanup, I went back and I was like, nah, I ain't feeling this. So I went back and I just created some new layers. So now here, I'm going to select this area right here with these two people, right? Use the magic lasso tool and just go over these people. And then I'm just going to use generative fill to fill that area up, select the one that I like, and then just move on. And then after that, I'm going to start selecting this big black circle behind this dude, right? And start cleaning that up. And let generative fill do its thing, pick the right option, and then move on to the right side. Do the same thing. Just draw over that area. Make sure to draw as close to the edges as possible. Boom, 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 boom. And then just hit that generative fill, boom, and it cleans it up. Select the one that works for the image and move on. And usually what I do is I zoom out to look at the whole image as a whole, just to make sure that it looks good from afar. So here, I'm just going to use the levels tool on an adjustment layer, color correct and darken the image because I want to mimic the mood of all the other images in this short film. And also I want it to be contrasty so that when I bring it into ComfyUI, ComfyUI has enough contrast so that it could understand the depth of the image. And then just go back and forth to see the before and after, see if what I did is okay, and then move on to the next one. So this next step, I'm using selective color. I want to give it a bluish, greenish hue in order to match the other images in the short film. Once again, just so that ComfyUI has a good base so that it could extract the depth of the image. Here you go, just messing around with the yellow channel, just to make sure that I dial that in. There's no rhyme or reason for this step right here. What I'm doing is I'm messing around with the sliders in order to get what I want. My color theory is not there yet. All right, just mess with those for a bit. Then we're gonna go down to the neutrals and start messing around with these sliders in order to lock in the color. So cool. So after that, I went back to the levels tool and I messed around with the levels a little bit more just to get in there, add a little bit more contrast. So I'm raising up the mid highs a little bit, lowering the mids a little bit, just so I can get a nice little contrast in there. Cool. So then after that, I felt like I got the levels I like, the color I like, but let's also bring in a reference shot that's in the film, and I want to make sure that I'm color correcting and color grading based on that shot. I'm just going to be doing a before and after, turning that layer on and off just to make sure that I have the same feel. This little piece of hair right here was messing with me, so I just used the magic lasso, went over it, did a generative fill, cleaned that up, picked the right image that I liked, and boom, that looked good to me. So now I'm going to select the whole canvas. I'm going to press Control-Shift-C and Control-V to paste the whole image back into that empty layer, right? And then I'm going to convert it into a smart object, and I'm going to add some sharpen. Just a little bit of sharpen, once again, so that ComfyUI has a good base to extract the depth. So there you go. And then one thing I noticed after doing that sharpen is that there's more to clean up. So I went into the smart object and I started using the same techniques. I went over it with the remove tool. I wanted to smooth out the image so that his muscles aren't all jagged and they're following this image to the T. Just using the remove tool and just going over all these little sections right here, just to smooth out his arms, smooth out that jacket. So I'm just going to speed this whole thing up now. One thing I noticed after cleaning up and making sure that it was smooth, it looked more muscular instead of like stones and cracked stone. I noticed that the bottom of the hand, it needed more definition. I carved out more definition underneath the hand. And after that, I used the rubber stamp tool in order to draw the background back over the hand in that area, right? So the hand is not all this clunky, it has this big mass around it. I wanted to make sure that ComfyUI knows that that's a hand. So I'm just rubber stamping it into this selection. Boom, 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 boom. There you go. Just keep on sampling the areas around it. All right, so now if we look at it, it looks more like a hand, right? If we go back and forth, it's not as chunky as before. Right? So then after that, I noticed that the edges were a little bit too sharp. So I used the blur tool in order to blur those edges so that they match kind of the blurriness of the overall image. There you go. Just kept on blurring those edges. There you go. Boom. So there you go. That's how I cleaned up this image. What I'm going to show you right now is the before and after, right? So we're going to mix IP-Adapter and ControlNet together in order to make a totally new shot that's based on the look and feel of this whole film. So here's my workflow. It looks complicated, but once you get into ComfyUI, you get into AI image generation, AI video generation, you'll get it. My workflow includes a load image. That's the image we're going to use to control the depth map with ControlNet. Then we have the IP-Adapter. That's where we're going to drag our style image in. We have our usual prompts, our usual negative prompts. Then we have the ControlNet Depth area. What it does is it looks at our original still image from the video, and it creates a depth map that we can use to control a totally different image. We can prompt whatever the hell we want, and it will give us a whole new image, which is sorcery. We have the render area, and then we have the ultimate SD Upscaler. Once you like an image, you can upscale that image, right? So the first section is the model that we're using, right? I've downloaded a whole bunch of freaking models throughout the years, and the one that I'm going to use today is Juggernaut XL. Juggernaut XL is just a good all-around model. Then we have the regular prompts here, and the prompt I'm going to use is high resolution, shirtless Bruce Lee, open hands, underwater, dark, dimly lit shadows, and muted colors. Then we have just the regular negatives, bad eyes, CGI, airbrushed, plastic, deformed, and watermark. Whenever you're downloading a model, make sure you read about the model before you even try to use the model. So now we're going to go into the load image area and the IP-Adapter. So here we're going to load the base image for ControlNet. Then we're going to load the IP-Adapter image for the style transfer. And IP-Adapter has a whole bunch of different settings here. I usually use plus high. It gives me the best results. If you try to do a style transfer that's more subdued, you could use the medium IP adapter. But right now, I really want to extract everything from that style. There's a whole bunch of strengths. In this one, I found that the linear strength did a good job. Let's move on to the ControlNet section. So here in the ControlNet, it creates like a 3D image in order to guide the image creation so that ComfyUI understands where the depth is in the image. What's the most farthest thing to the front and what's the most farthest thing to the back. Here you go. So there's a whole bunch of settings here. There's a whole bunch of control nets that I've downloaded throughout the years, but this one we're going to use today is just the depth map control net. And here I'm just going to lower the strength to 0.9 just to give the AI a little bit more freedom to create whatever it wants based on your prompt. Cool. Moving to the next section, which is the render section. I'm going to show you what the image looks like without ControlNet and what it looks like without IP-Adapter. I have this node right here that I'm able to turn off groups. I'm going to turn off IP-Adapter, and I'm going to turn off the ControlNet Depth, and I'm also going to turn off the Upscale node. And we're going to run this, and boom. This is what the image will look like without ControlNet Depth and IP-Adapter, right? We get a vanilla image. If I kept on prompting, I get something that looks really good, right? But this is not what we're going for. In this next step, I'm going to turn on the depth control net. So let's run this again with ControlNet Depth, and boom, we're getting the hands in there. We're getting the pose in there. So let's turn on IP-Adapter, boom, and let's run this workflow again, and boom, here you go. See? Before, there was no detail in the background, but being that it looked at the style reference image through the technology of IP-Adapter, it was able to add water around him, which is amazing, right? So I'm going to turn on Ultimate SD Upscaler, and let me go through these settings real quick. Here, if you notice, I am not using the prompt that I used in the beginning of the workflow, because the thing is, the Ultimate SD Upscaler upscales the image in tiles. Then at the very end, it'll put everything back together. Now, if I was to get too detailed with the prompt, it's going to try to add all that detail into each tile. And you don't want that. I learned that the hard way. So it's suggested you just use quality prompts like high resolution, masterpiece, high quality, intricate details. Now, I don't know if these really work. I use them just in case. Let's move on to the next node. And here's the load upscale model. I'm using 4X NMKD CX 200K because the CivicEye website said that this is the perfect upscaler for this model. You can use any upscaler you want, but I try to stick with whatever they're telling me in those descriptions. So this is the Ultimate SD Upscaler node right here. I'm just using a random seed. I'm using 15 steps. I'm using CFG 4.5, and I'm using a denoise of 30. The higher you go with your denoise, the more you change the image. So I've noticed for my testing that a denoise of 0.2 up to like 0.35 gives you decent results. Let's run this and see what it gives us. And wipe my tears real quick. I'm crying. So here you go. So this is the upscale. The upscale doesn't look too different from the original image. It was more so that we get a higher quality image so that when we run it through AI video generator, we have enough pixels in order to do anything we want. Remember, the larger the image is, the more detail the image has, the better the AI video generator handles the video. Now we're in Photoshop. We're going to clean up the image just like we cleaned up the image in the intro of this tutorial, right? We're going to use the remove tool and just start removing areas we don't like these little areas, like what the hell is that triangle right there? What the hell is that, right? Just go over these little images. He has a little freaking speckle on his cheek. What the hell is that, right? He has all these little things on his face, and we're just going to use the remove tool to quickly remove that stuff. Boom, boom, boom. And I'm just going to speed up the rest of the cleanup. Boom, boom, boom. All right. There's going to be times that the remove tool it's not going to do the best job. We're still going to have to use the lasso tool in order to select larger areas and use the generative fill to clean up those areas. I'm creating another layer, and what I'm going to use is the rubber stamp tool. You can use all these techniques to clean up your images. It doesn't have to be one tool over the other. I usually go back and forth between tools, whatever feels right. If I want to get granular with my fixes and my cleanups, I use the rubber stamp tool because it gives me more control. I can sample colors around the neck, colors around areas, and just rubber stamp them where I need them to go. So this is much more of a controlled way to clean up your image. And now I'm just going to speed it up because this is going to take a long ass time, you know? I noticed that this finger was getting lost in the shadow underneath his nose. So here what I'm doing is I'm making a selection around the edge of the finger, creating another layer in order to put color in that layer. Then I'm going to eye drop the medium area of that finger. I'm going to use it as a base so that it can blend in with that finger. Then I'm going to eye drop the highlight area, lock the layer so that we're only editing the layer and nothing outside of the layer. So I'm locking the alpha of the layer and I'm drawing over the edges just to mimic what this finger would look like in that shadowy area, right? So cool. I think this looks great. Boom, boom, man. And now I'm going to blur it a little bit just so it can mimic the blur of the original image, right? Because it was a little too sharp. Boom, boom, boom. You got that blur in there. It looks good. Now we're going to add some noise in order to mimic the noise of the image. So next, what I did was I added a mask, and I'm going to soften up those edges in order for them to transition into the finger in the original image. There you go. So now I'm just making sure that I use black in those sections and clean up the edges of those images. And after that, I went back to the image and I started cleaning it again. Because the thing is, you don't know what the image looks like until you pull back and see it as a whole. Went over the image, went over the muscles, went over the skin, went over areas that I didn't like. Boom, boom, boom. All right, so this is what the image looks like. And I'm happy with the whole cleanup. So now we're going to create the first image in order to use it in Runway ML's first and last frame animation. My idea is he goes from a medium shot to a close-up shot and then morphs into him holding a watery orb. So in Midjourney, I created this initial image and the image looked good. And this is the prompt that we used. I liked the image a lot, but my curiosity wanted more. So I ran a very subtle and a very strong. And Midjourney gave me all these variations, right? And from all these variations, I really like this one right here. I like the stance. I like the way he was, posing underneath the water. I was like, oh man, I love the image, but it has black bars, right? Midjourney is awesome. It has an editor. So I went to the editor. And what I did was I drew over the black bar at the top, right? And then I drew over the black bar at the bottom. Boom, 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 right? And I kept the same prompt. And then I just hit submit twice. Boom, boom. By hitting submit twice, Midjourney is going to give me a set of 8 images for me to choose from so that I have a good enough variety. But out of all the images, I really like this one. Right? Because it did a good job at the top. It did a good job at the bottom. I ran a upscale subtle and an upscale creative just to see what Midjourney gives us. Usually upscale subtle stays really close to the original image, and then upscale creative adds more detail and it adds a little bit of creativeness to it. From both of these upscales, I went with the creative upscale because it just had more details in it. All right, so now we're in Runway. I'm going to upload the first frame, boom, boom, boom. Then I'm going to upload the last frame, boom, boom, boom. And then I'm going to just write this simple prompt in here. And the prompt is he pulls his hands apart while water flows behind him. Hit generate on that, boom, boom, boom. And this is what we got. Now, don't get it twisted. The video alone took a couple of tries, right? But I'm going to save you that horror. right? Maybe in another video, I'll show you all the mess ups and all the freaking duds and everything. I think it looks really good for what I need it for when I bring it back into After Effects and add a whole bunch of other things for it. I'm still adding particles and water and motion and blurs and also grain at the very end in order just to composite it and make it look dope as f. You heard? This is what we started out with, and this is what we ended up with. The power of using ComfyUI with Depth Map and IP-Adapter to create a totally new image is crazy. Here's a little breakdown of all the videos that I use for this one shot. And then all these shots come together and then they create this shot right here. Boom, boom, with a dragon. We fly through the dragon and then it goes into a totally different shot. I'm working on a course. It's going to be beefy. I'm talking about hours and hours of different techniques on how to combine AI and After Effects to create short films, commercials, animations. It doesn't matter. You could take these techniques and use them for whatever. So if you're interested in that, please sign up to the wait list. I hope you guys learned a lot from this. Let's get it on to the next one. Peace.